She kissed a stranger at her ex's party, not knowing he owned the company she worked for. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The night glittered with champagne lights and camera flashes. The iconic magazine launch party was the kind of event people posted about just to prove they were invited. Waiters in crisp uniforms floated through the crowd with trays of caviar, while jazz hummed beneath the chatter of New York's media elite. Abby Smith stood near the bar, her glass trembling slightly in her hand. She wore the only black dress she owned that still fit after 2 years of sleepless deadlines and instant noodles. She had spent her 20s climbing the impossible wall of journalism, chasing stories that never paid enough, and exes who never stayed long. Her heart sank when she saw him Ethan Cole, her former boyfriend, and the magazine's star photographer. He was laughing under the chandeliers, his arm around a woman half her age, an intern Abby had once mentored, the same intern now wearing the necklace Abby had lost in his apartment. The bartender glanced at her with sympathy. Abby gave a brittle smile, took a deep breath, and muttered under her breath, "Not tonight, Abby. You promised you would stay classy." But class flew out the window when Ethan turned, met her eyes, and raised his glass in a mocking toast. Something inside her snapped. "Another one," she said, her voice tight. The bartender poured. The second sip burned hotter than pride. Then she saw him. A man standing alone near the balcony doors, tall, tailored suit, eyes calm in a room full of noise. He was watching the crowd with quiet amusement, not arrogance, not interest, just distance, as if he did not belong here either. Abby did not think. She walked straight toward him, heels clicking like a countdown. Ethan was watching, and that was all that mattered. "Hi," she said, too brightly, too fast. "Do me a favor." He blinked, startled. "What?" Before he could finish, she kissed him. The room went silent for one perfect, reckless second. The flash of a phone camera cut through the air. Someone gasped. Someone whispered. Abby stepped back, breathless, cheeks flushed with adrenaline and regret. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes darting anywhere but his face. The man's expression softened, surprise fading into the hint of a smile. His voice was low, warm, almost teasing. "Guess I should at least know your name before I become tomorrow's headline." "Abby," she said, barely breathing. "Abby Smith." He offered his hand with quiet charm. Ryan Brown." She shook it, too dazed to notice the subtle glances around them, the PR manager whispering, the camera still recording, the way Ryan's name made a few heads turn. Then, before she could ask who he was, a voice shouted across the room, "That's the new investor, the guy from Brown Media." "Schwanze." The words sliced through the music. Abby froze. The stranger she had just kissed was not just any guest, he was the new owner of the magazine she worked for. Ryan's smile did not fade. He leaned in and said softly, "Well, Miss Smith, this will make Monday morning interesting." The crowd started buzzing again. Abby stood there, mortified, while he calmly turned toward the balcony, hands in his pockets, as if this were the most ordinary thing in the world. Somewhere behind her, Ethan's laughter echoed, sharp, cruel, unforgettable. But when she looked back at Ryan, the stranger she had kissed, she saw no judgment in his eyes, only curiosity. And that, somehow, was worse. Monday morning arrived with a cruel kind of irony. The sky over Manhattan was gray, the kind of color that made the city look tired. Abby Smith stood in front of the mirrored elevator doors of iconic magazine, clutching a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Her phone buzzed nonstop texts from coworkers, gossip links, and one message from her mother that simply said, "You are trending. Please tell me it is good news." It was not. Every entertainment blog in New York had her face on the front page. The drunk editor's kiss. Who is the woman who kissed Brown Media's CEO? Some called her bold, others called her reckless. Abby just felt nauseous. When the elevator doors opened, she walked straight into a wall of silence. Conversations died as she passed the desks. Her friend Mia mouthed good luck with wide eyes. Abby went directly to her editor-in-chief's office, where the blinds were half closed, as if hiding from the storm. "Abby," said Mark Benson, her boss, rubbing his temples, "do you have any idea what kind of fire you started? Brown Media just acquired Iconic last month. That man you kissed is our new owner." Abby swallowed hard. "I did not know who he was." Cho, I believe you, Mark said, but the board will not. They want damage control, not apologies. And if the story does not die this week, you will be the one sacrificed. Her chest tightened. She thought of rent, student loans, and the years she had spent climbing from unpaid intern to editor. Please let me fix it, she said quietly. Mark sighed. Fine. There is a meeting at 10. New management wants to speak with all senior editors. Do not say a word unless asked. Maybe this will blow over. Ta! At 10 sharp, the conference room was full. The walls were lined with framed covers of past issues, glossy faces of celebrities smiling down like judgment. The room fell silent when the door opened. Ryan Brown walked in. The same man from the party. The same calm eyes. But now, in daylight, he looked different, composed, authoritative, the kind of person who carried gravity without effort. Good morning, he said, his voice smooth but firm. I will keep this short. Brown Media did not buy Iconic to change its soul. We bought it to remind people that storytelling still matters. Abby kept her eyes on her notebook, hoping he would not notice her. But halfway through his speech, his gaze landed on her. Just a second, just enough to make her heart skip. When the meeting ended, Mark whispered, "He wants to see you in his office." Abby's pulse raced as she stepped into the executive suite. Ryan stood by the window overlooking Fifth Avenue. He turned slowly when she entered. "Miss Smith," he said. "Or do you prefer Abby?" "Abby is fine," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. He nodded. "I assume you have seen the headlines. Half of them think our kiss was a publicity stunt. The other half think it was an affair." "It was neither," she said quickly. "I know." His tone softened. "Which is why I have a proposal. I want you to lead a new project. Human stories. Real people, real voices. It will be our chance to rebuild Iconic's reputation." She blinked. "You want me to stay? After all this?" "I want you to write something that matters," he said. "But there are conditions. For 30 days, you will work directly under me. No press statements, no interviews, and you will ignore the gossip." "Can you do that?" Abby hesitated, searching his expression for mockery, but found none. Only a quiet challenge. "Yes," she said finally. "I can." "Good." He smiled faintly. "Then we start tomorrow. And Miss Smith?" He paused, his voice lower. "Try not to kiss anyone at the next company event." Abby felt her face heat up. "I will do my best, sir." When she left the office, the noise of the newsroom felt distant, muffled. She sat at her desk and opened a blank document titled Human Stories. The cursor blinked, patient and expectant. For the first time in months, she felt something that was not fear or humiliation. It was purpose, strange, fragile, but real. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, Abby began typing the first line of what would become the most important story of her life. The following morning, Abby arrived at the office earlier than anyone else. The newsroom felt unusually quiet, the city still waking outside the windows. She placed her coffee on the desk and stared at the glowing screen that read Project Human Stories. It sounded simple, yet she had no idea where to begin. At exactly 8:30, a message appeared in her inbox. From Ryan Brown. Subject: Ground Rules. The email was brief and direct. 1. Every interview must be real. No ghostwriting, no PR gloss. 2. We work side by side for 30 days. You report to me directly. 3. Keep the story human, even if it makes us uncomfortable. She read it twice, then a third time. There was no warmth, no sign of the man who had smiled after being kissed in front of half of New York. It was professional, distant, and it irritated her more than it should. At 10 o'clock, she entered his office for the first planning session. The large glass room looked over the entire floor. Ryan was already there, sleeves rolled up, reading notes. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Good morning," she replied, setting down her folder. "I brought a list of potential profiles." He nodded, scanning her pages. A retired firefighter, a single mother running a bakery, a man who lost everything and started again. "I like these, but I want you to tell me why each one matters." Abby hesitated. "Because they are honest. Because people are tired of clickbait and scandals. They want to read something that reminds them we are still human." Ryan looked up then, eyes meeting hers. "Good answer. That is the exact reason I created this project." She blinked. "You created it?" "Yes," he said simply, after seeing how easy it is for truth to be buried under noise. The room went quiet. For a moment, Abby saw a glimpse of something deeper behind his controlled exterior weariness, maybe even sadness, but it vanished quickly. They worked through the morning, their conversation oscillating between ideas and disagreements. Ryan's standards were impossibly high. He edited every word she wrote, asked for meaning behind each sentence, and yet his criticism never felt cruel. It was surgical, precise, and somehow it made her want to do better. By lunch, her frustration turned into reluctant respect. When she left his office, her notebook was filled with scribbles, arrows, and one small note he had written on the margin. Do not write to impress, write to connect. That night, Abby stayed late, reworking her first draft. The building grew dark, the hum of computers fading until only the city lights reflected on the glass. Around 9, she heard footsteps. Ryan appeared at her desk holding 2 cups of coffee. You are still here, he said, offering 1 cup. I could say the same about you. He smiled faintly. Touch. So, what are you working on? She showed him the headline, The Man Who Fixes Shoes for Strangers. Ryan read silently. Interesting. Why shoes? Because people do not look down anymore, she said. They walk too fast to notice what is beneath them. But he does. He repairs what everyone else steps on. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Keep that line. It is beautiful. Abby felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. For the first time since that humiliating night, someone looked at her work, not her mistake. As he turned to leave, she said, Why did you really choose me for this project, Mr. Brown? You could have picked anyone. He stopped at the door, his back to her. Because, he said quietly, you are the only one here who still believes stories can heal people. I read your old pieces. You wrote about kindness when no one cared. No. Then he left, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Abby sat still, the glow of the monitor painting her face in soft light. She whispered to herself, stories can heal people. For the first time, she believed it again. 2 weeks passed, and the Human Stories project began to take shape. Abby and Ryan met every morning at 8 sharp, reviewing drafts, photographs, and reader comments from the pilot pieces. The newsroom had stopped whispering about the party kiss, at least to her face. For the first time in months, Abby felt that her work mattered. Ryan was demanding but fair. He questioned everything she wrote, often making her rewrite entire paragraphs. Yet between the tense debates and long nights, something began to shift. The sharp edges of their conversations softened into genuine curiosity about each other. One afternoon, while they reviewed the layout for the 3rd issue, the lights flickered during a thunderstorm. Ryan looked up from his laptop. Let us call it a day before the building loses power. Abby smiled, stretching her shoulders. I did not think CEOs were allowed to leave early. He chuckled. I am giving you a ride home before the subway floods again. Outside, rain poured over the city like a curtain. They ran to his car, laughing as thunder cracked overhead. Inside the warm cabin, the sound of rain softened into a steady rhythm. Abby stared out the window, her reflection trembling with each flash of lightning. Do you ever miss it? She asked quietly. Miss what? Being just a writer, before everything turned into management, numbers, and power. Ryan's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Every day, he admitted. But I learned something. When you own the story, you carry the responsibility to protect the people in it. Tem. Abby turned to look at him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. For a moment, he seemed less like a billionaire and more like the man she had met on that balcony, the quiet stranger who did not belong to the noise. At a red light, he glanced at her. Do you regret that night? The kiss? She asked. He nodded once. She hesitated. At first, yes, it ruined everything. But maybe it also gave me this project, and maybe it showed me who I am when I stopped pretending. Ryan smiled faintly. Then maybe it was not a mistake. The light turned green, and neither of them spoke again until he parked in front of her building. Thank you for the ride, she said, opening the door. Abby, he said softly before she stepped out, you have a gift. Do not let fear make you small. Her breath caught, but before she could answer, he was already looking away, pretending to check his phone. She nodded, closed the door, and walked inside with her heart beating faster than it should have. Over the next few days, their rhythm became almost effortless. Morning coffee, brainstorming sessions, silent moments of shared focus. Ryan would bring her small things, a muffin from the cafe downstairs, a sticky note with a quote he thought she might like. Abby pretended not to read too much into it, but every gesture lingered. On Friday evening, the office hosted a small reception for donors and partners. Ryan had asked her to attend as the project's representative. Abby wore a simple navy dress, her hair tied loosely. When she arrived, the hum of conversation paused for a second. People noticed, but no one dared mention the infamous kiss anymore. Ryan greeted her with a polite smile, keeping a careful professional distance. "You did well on the firefighter story," he said. "It reached 1 million views without a single ad boost." "That is because people still want to believe in decency," Abby replied. "Exactly." His eyes held hers for a moment too long before he turned to address the crowd. During his short speech, he mentioned her by name. "The success of human stories belongs to the people who still believe truth has beauty." Abby Smith reminded us of that. Applause followed, warm and sincere. Abby felt her face flush, but when she looked at Ryan, he was already moving to speak with a sponsor. Later, as the guests began to leave, she found him alone on the terrace. The city lights shimmered below them, the air crisp after the storm. "I did not expect you to say that about me," she said. "I meant it," he replied. "You brought back the heart of this company." She smiled, her voice softer. "And you brought back mine." For a long second, neither of them moved. Then Ryan stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Abby," he said gently, "be careful with what you say. Some truths are too easy to misinterpret." Her smile faded. "Right. I forgot." CEO and employee. He looked away, guilt flickering across his face. "It is not that simple." "Maybe it is," she whispered. The night held its breath between them, the hum of the city rising like a heartbeat. Something unspoken hovered in the air, fragile and real, before they both turned away. Neither of them noticed the flash of a phone camera from across the terrace as someone capturing the moment that would soon become tomorrow's scandal. The next morning, Abby's phone exploded with notifications. Her face filled the screen of every gossip site once again, this time under a new headline. "Editor and CEO caught in late-night terrace moment." The photo showed her and Ryan standing close, city lights glowing behind them, his eyes locked on hers. It looked intimate, romantic, and completely out of context. Her stomach dropped. It was happening all over again. She rushed into the office before most employees arrived, but whispers already floated through the hallway. Mia ran toward her, eyes wide. "Abby, it is everywhere. The board is furious. They think this time it was real." Abby's chest tightened. "Where is Ryan?" "In his office. He has been on calls since sunrise." Abby knocked once before stepping inside. Ryan was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, controlled, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. When he saw her, he ended the call and sighed. "I did not leak that photo," she said immediately. "I know," he answered. "But the board does not. They think we are jeopardizing the merger with the European partners. They want an internal review." She stared at him. "A review? Of what, my professionalism or my morality?" "Both, apparently." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "They are threatening to suspend you while they investigate." Abby's voice broke slightly. "And what about you?" "They cannot suspend me," he said, almost bitterly. "But they can remove me from Iconic if they think I am compromising the company." The silence between them stretched heavy and painful. Finally, Abby said quietly, "Then let me resign. That will fix everything." Ryan looked up sharply. "No, you did nothing wrong. You will not be the scapegoat for another rumor." "Ryan," she said, trying to keep her tone calm, "the last time this happened, I almost lost everything. I cannot go through it again." He stepped closer, his expression softening. "Abby, please, trust me to handle this." But before she could answer, Mark appeared at the door, his face pale. "The board has called an emergency meeting. They want both of you upstairs. Now." The conference room was filled with cold faces and expensive suits. The chairman spoke first. "Mr. Brown, Miss Smith, we have reviewed the media coverage. Whether or not this relationship exists, the perception damages our credibility. One of you will need to step back until the story clears." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then I will step back." Abby turned to him, shocked. "What? You cannot—" He interrupted softly. "It is my company. I can choose to take responsibility." The chairman nodded curtly. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your direct oversight of Iconic. We will appoint interim leadership. Tambor." The room buzzed with whispers as Ryan stood. He gave Abby a small, reassuring nod, then walked out without another word. When the meeting ended, Abby found him in the elevator lobby. "Why did you do that?" she demanded. "Because you were right," he said quietly. "You do not deserve to pay for a story you did not write." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. "You just sacrificed your position." He smiled faintly. "Positions can be earned back. Integrity cannot." For a moment she could not speak. He pressed the elevator button, and the doors slid open. Before stepping inside, he looked at her one last time. "Keep the project alive, Abby. Do not let them turn it into another headline." Then he was gone. That night, the newsroom felt empty without him. Abby sat alone, the screens around her dim. She scrolled through the photo one last time, the terrace, the lights, the distance that had been mistaken for closeness. Her heart ached, not from shame, but from something far deeper. He had protected her when he did not have to, and now she would have to protect what he believed in, the truth, that stories could still heal. She opened the next document in the Human Stories folder and began typing, her fingers steady despite the tears in her eyes. The headline read, "The Man Who Chose Integrity." Days turned into weeks, and the office no longer sounded the same. Ryan's absence changed everything. Meetings felt heavier, laughter faded, and the Human Stories project began to stall. Without his steady presence, executives pushed for commercial pieces, celebrity profiles, and easy clicks. Abby fought to keep the project alive, but she felt the resistance tightening around her like an invisible rope. Each email from upper management contained new restrictions. Shorten articles. Cut emotional tone. Replace real people with influencers. One evening, after everyone else had left, she sat at her desk surrounded by half-finished drafts. The glow from her monitor flickered across her tired eyes. She whispered to herself, "This is not what we built." A soft knock broke the silence. It was Mia, holding 2 cups of tea. "You look like you need this," she said gently. Abby smiled weakly. "Thank you. I think the board wants to bury Human Stories." Mia hesitated. "There is something else. I overheard a call earlier. They are planning to cancel the entire department next month." Abby felt her stomach twist. Cancel it? They cannot. It is the only project that still makes people care. Mia lowered her voice. "Unless someone higher steps in, it is already decided." That night, Abby could not sleep. She opened her laptop and read through Ryan's last message. Do not let them turn it into another headline. She thought about the people she had interviewed, the firefighter, the baker, the shoemaker. They had trusted her to tell their truth. She owed them more than silence. The next morning, she made a decision. She gathered all the stories, printed them out, and arranged them into a single file labeled The Heart of Iconic. She spent the entire day editing, writing an introduction that carried every ounce of sincerity she had left. When she finished, she sent one copy to the board, and one to Ryan. A few days later, she received an email from a private address. The subject line read, "Meet me at the rooftop at 7. Her pulse quickened. She climbed the stairs to the top of the building as the sun began to set. The city stretched below, gold and quiet. Ryan stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, the wind stirring his hair. "You got my email," he said with a small smile. "I was not sure it was really you," she admitted. "You disappeared. I needed time to clean up the mess," he said, "and to see what would happen if I stepped away. I wanted to know if people still believed in what we started." Abby held up the folder. "You asked me not to let them turn it into a headline. I did not, but they are trying to kill it anyway." Ryan took the file, flipping through the pages slowly. His expression softened as he read the first line of her introduction. "You wrote, 'The truest stories are the ones that survive silence.' That is beautiful." "I meant it," she said, "but I cannot fight this alone anymore." "Trey." Ryan closed the folder and looked at her. "You will not have to. I bought back the majority shares of Iconic this morning." Abby stared at him, stunned. "You what?" "I could not stand watching it die," he said. "And I had to see if you would still stand for it even when I was gone. You did." She took a step closer, disbelief melting into relief. "You tested me." He smiled faintly. "I tested both of us." For a moment, the noise of the city faded away. Abby's eyes glistened under the fading light. "What happens now?" Ryan held up the folder. "Now, we publish this exactly as it is. No edits, no sponsors, no compromises. And after that, I have another proposal for you." Her voice trembled. "A business proposal?" His smile deepened, quiet and knowing. "Not exactly." The wind swept between them, carrying away the last traces of doubt. For the first time in a long while, Abby believed that truth and maybe love had found its way back home. The following week moved like a storm. The announcement that Ryan Brown had returned as the owner of Iconic spread through the media industry within hours. Some called it redemption. Others called it a power play. But inside the newsroom, for the first time in months, people began to smile again. Ryan reinstated the Human Stories department immediately, restoring every writer who had been reassigned. He refused to hold a press conference, saying only that truth does not need rebranding. Abby stood beside him during the staff meeting, quietly taking notes while the room buzzed with cautious hope. When the meeting ended, he approached her desk. "Are you ready for the chaos that comes with telling the truth?" She looked up at him, eyes steady. "I have lived through worse." He smiled. "Then let us make something worth believing in." Together, they spent the next several days finalizing the special edition titled The Heart of Iconic. Abby edited each piece until sunrise, while Ryan personally reviewed the final layout. He refused to let marketing add sponsors or advertisements. "No price tag," he said firmly. "If we are going to rebuild trust, it has to start without a sale attached." On the night before publication, the two of them stood in the printing room, surrounded by stacks of glossy pages. The machines hummed like distant thunder. Abby ran her fingers over the cover photo, a simple image of the shoemaker she had once interviewed, smiling shyly beside his repair stand. "You saved this magazine," she said quietly. Ryan shook his head. "You did. I only gave it room to breathe again." She turned toward him. "Why did you come back, Ryan? You could have walked away." He hesitated before answering. "Because I realized something while I was gone. The stories were never just about other people. They were about us, about everyone who is trying to be seen, to be understood, to be forgiven." Her voice softened. "You mean forgiveness for the kiss, or for everything after?" He gave a small, self-conscious laugh. "Maybe both." They stood in silence, the hum of the printer filling the air. Then Ryan reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. Inside was a single silver pin engraved with one word: Truth. "I had this made for you," he said. "You reminded me what it stands for." "Amal." Abby's fingers trembled as she held it. "You kept the old company pins." "I kept yours," he replied. The weight of his words hung between them, fragile but powerful. She looked up, meeting his eyes. "Ryan, you cannot keep saving me. I need to stand on my own." He nodded slowly. "I know, but sometimes standing together is not the same as being saved." Before she could respond, a junior editor rushed in, breathless. "The first review just came in. The pre-release copies are trending. People are calling it the most honest issue in years." Abby and Ryan exchanged a stunned look, then both laughed, a sound full of relief and disbelief. As the young editor ran out again, Abby turned back to Ryan. "Maybe the world still wants stories that feel human." "Maybe," he said, his eyes warm. "Or maybe they just needed someone brave enough to tell them." The clock on the wall struck midnight, signaling the start of a new day. The first shipment of magazines rolled off the press, each copy carrying their shared faith bound in print and ink. Abby picked one up, holding it close like something precious. "You know," she said softly, "this feels like a beginning, not an ending." Ryan smiled, his gaze steady on her. "Then, let us see where the story goes next." When The Heart of Iconic finally hit the stands, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The issue sold out in less than 48 hours. Readers shared the stories across every platform, quoting lines about kindness, resilience, and redemption. News anchors called it a revival of real journalism, while others simply called it the magazine that made people feel again. Abby watched the numbers climb from her desk, barely able to believe it. The comment sections overflowed with messages from people who had seen themselves in the pages. One reader wrote, "I cried in the grocery store aisle. Thank you for reminding us that real stories still exist." The newsroom buzzed with energy that had been missing for far too long. Even the most cynical editors smiled when they passed her. Mark Benson stopped by her desk, placing a copy of the magazine in front of her. "I think you just saved us all, Abby," he said warmly, "and maybe reminded us why we started." Later that evening, she walked into Ryan's office to find him standing by the window, watching the city below. He held one of the printed issues, the light from the skyline reflecting in the glass. "It worked," she said softly. He turned toward her, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "It did, but you know what means more than the sales?" "What?" "The letters," he said. "Dozens of them. People writing to say the stories made them call their parents, forgive a friend, or start again. That is what success looks like." Abby felt her chest tighten with quiet pride. "Then I guess we did something good." Ryan stepped closer, holding out a letter sealed in a white envelope. "This one is for you." It came addressed to the editor who kissed the stranger. She raised an eyebrow, but opened it carefully. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "Sometimes the stories we regret are the ones that save us. Keep writing, Abby Smith." Her breath caught. She looked up, meeting Ryan's gaze. "Who sent this?" He smiled slightly. "A reader who understands second chances." Gumgal. For a moment, the air between them felt charged again, familiar, electric. Abby took a step closer, then stopped herself. Ryan, when this all started, I thought you were just another powerful man trying to fix his reputation. But you were trying to fix something much deeper, were you not? He nodded slowly. I was trying to fix myself. Silence filled the room, heavy but gentle. Then he said quietly, You once told me that stories can heal people. I think you were right. You healed this place. And maybe, without realizing it, you healed me too. Her voice trembled slightly. You gave me a chance when no one else did. He shook his head. You earned it. I just had the privilege of watching you prove everyone wrong. Outside, the city lights flickered like camera flashes from a distant party. Abby looked down at the letter again and smiled. You know, it all began with one impulsive kiss. Ryan chuckled softly. And somehow, it turned into the most honest thing we ever did. They stood by the window in comfortable silence as the city moved beneath them. The world had forgiven, the work had prevailed, and the truth had survived. For the first time since that chaotic night, Abby felt completely at peace. She did not know where life would take her next, but she knew one thing for certain: whatever story came next, she would write it with her whole heart. A year later, the world of media had changed once again, but this time it changed because of them. Iconic was no longer just a glossy magazine. It had become a movement. Schools invited Abby to speak about authentic storytelling. Other publications began launching similar projects, each crediting the heart of Iconic as their inspiration. The office had grown busier, brighter, more alive. The walls that once echoed with gossip now carried framed letters from readers around the world. Each note began the same way. Thank you for telling the truth. That morning, the staff gathered for the magazine's anniversary celebration. Balloons floated near the ceiling, and laughter filled the air. Mark tapped his glass, smiling. A year ago, we nearly lost this place, he said. Now we are standing on the front line of change. Let us thank the two people who made that happen, Abby Smith and Ryan Brown. Applause erupted. Abby felt her cheeks warm as everyone turned to her. She glanced at Ryan, who stood beside her holding a small velvet box. When the noise settled, he stepped forward. I have one more announcement, Ryan said, his tone gentle but confident. Abby and I promised each other that Iconic would never forget where it came from. To honor that, we are launching a new annual issue called One Kindness Day, dedicated to real people who make the world better. The crowd clapped again. But then Ryan looked directly at Abby. And personally, he continued, I have something else to say. The room went quiet. Abby blinked, unsure of what was happening as he opened the box. Inside was not a diamond ring, but the same silver pin engraved with one word: truth. It shimmered under the office lights. Abby Smith, he said softly, a year ago you kissed a stranger because you wanted to forget someone who hurt you. That mistake changed my life. It reminded me that even the messiest moments can lead to the most honest beginnings. So today, I am asking you not for a business deal, not for a story, but for a partnership in life and in truth. Gasps and smiles rippled through the room. Abby's hands trembled as she took the pin, her eyes bright with emotion. Ryan, she whispered, this is not how love stories are supposed to start. He smiled. Maybe not, but this one was never supposed to be ordinary. Wait. The staff cheered as Ryan gently pinned the silver badge onto her dress. It still means truth, he said, but now it also means us. Later that night, after the party ended, they stood on the same rooftop where everything had begun. The city glowed beneath them, alive and forgiving. Abby leaned on the railing, the wind brushing against her hair. It feels strange, she said softly. 1 year ago, I thought my career was over. Now, it feels like everything is just beginning. Ryan smiled, taking her hand. That is what truth does. It breaks before it rebuilds. She looked up at him, eyes shining. And love? He laughed quietly. Love does the same thing. They stood there as the lights of New York stretched endlessly below, the hum of the city blending with the rhythm of their heartbeat. Abby turned toward him and whispered, So, what do we call this story? Ryan thought for a moment, then smiled. The kiss that changed everything. YOLO. She laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder as the skyline shimmered. The camera of time pulled back, leaving only their silhouettes against the city that had once judged them, now witnessing their peace. And as the screen faded to black, the final line appeared. Real love, like real stories, begins when the truth no longer needs defending.